Muslim is always reflecting, is always trying to seek forgiveness for his actions that are wrong. You haven't even met them, and my child is going to go there, and this child's going to do that, and we're going to have Assalamu alaikum. My name is Omar Tariq, but everyone calls me OT. I am a Muslim life coach that helps husbands and future husbands prepare for their marriage and improve them if they're struggling. It's interesting to you. If you want to build a marriage that is a healthy Islamic marriage that gives you peace, check out my description and book a call with me today. So I'm really excited. I want to talk about a hadith that means a lot to me. When I was younger and I was learning about leadership, this hadith was something that really helped me and really started my journey. And there's so much we can reflect on. I hope I could share a couple of reflections with you today. The hadith goes, Abdullah ibn Umar reported, the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, said, every one of you is a shepherd and is responsible for his flock. The leader of people is a guardian and is responsible for his subjects. A man is the guardian of his family and he is responsible for them. And a woman is the guardian of her husband's home and his children, and she is responsible for them. The servant of a man is a guardian for the property of his master, and he is responsible for it. No doubt, every one of you is a shepherd and is responsible for his flock. So, one of the first things that we have here is a sense of an accountability, a title, a leadership, that each one of us are going to have some sort of responsibility. The thing that I love about this hadith is whatever you might believe about positions or in an official capacity, irrespective of where you are in life or what your gender is, this hadith makes it clear that each one of us is going to have a responsibility. Some specific examples are given in the hadith, but even if you don't fall under those categories, we know that we will have a flock that we are answering for. In Islam, leadership is very important. One quick example is of the 7 people that are going to be in the shade of Allah's throne on the Day of Judgment, where the sun is so close and people are drowning in their own sweat, and only the people that are in the shade of Allah's throne have any sort of reprieve. Of them is a just ruler, someone who was given a charge of people, and they led the people with a sense of justice, and they did not lead them with tyranny. And on the other hand, there are other hadith that are very terrifying, that if you were put in charge of a people, and for example, the Prophet says something of this effect, that you were put in charge of a people, then you will come on the Day of Judgment and your hand will be tied to your neck. And if you were not a just ruler, that injustice will drag you to the hellfire. And if you were a just ruler, that justice will untie that hand. The roles and responsibilities that we have here, although they may be different for different types of leaders, the underlying idea that we take leadership very seriously as Muslims. We are trying to be the best versions of ourselves, and we understand that we will be accountable for our actions. In Islam, we know that if we make a mistake, we have to ask for forgiveness for that mistake. And if we offend somebody or make a mistake that impacts somebody else, Allah will not take that right away from that person. So I have to go and ask forgiveness from that person as well, and try to do good and try to make up for my errors in order for that not to be held against me in my account. So one of the first things that I wanted to bring up here in terms of reflecting on this hadith is it talks about a man, and a man as being a leader and a leader of the family, but then it also mentions your spouse. It mentions the woman and what her leadership is. Right there, Allah is dividing roles and responsibilities and makes it very clear. And these are the basic responsibilities. The scholars say that if you want to have an agreement with your wife and there's something that you're differing in, maybe she's helping provide, maybe you're helping a little bit more at home, there's no issue with some sort of reconciliation, some sort of understanding between the spouses. But without getting too technical, the very basics are laid bare and the responsibilities are there. As a man, as I tell my guys, I tell my clients, hey, can you go out there and make $100? If you need to today, go out there and make $100, can you do it? That's a vast oversimplification of what a husband is responsible for. But there is a financial burden upon every one of us and for our families, and there may be a time where the people in our charge can't work at all and they are solely dependent on you. Can you do it? Can you handle it? Have you started that? Have you started figuring out different ways? Do you have one source of income? Have you experimented with having multiple sources of income? And when we are doing these responsibilities, we are trying to be physically strong. We're trying to be in shape. We're trying to protect the family. We're trying to be aware that there might be physical harms out there. So one day I might need to step in, or make sure we're very watchful. Our kids are at the playground and we're just looking around, making sure there's no danger, or one of our child's about to fall and we catch them before that happens, or maybe there's things that need to be taken care of outside of the house, putting up a fence, cleaning things. You might not have those skills right now, but you fall into your role and responsibility and recognize that, hey, as a man, these are things that I want to do for my family. These are things that they might not have those skills either, and it's what we need. If the heat goes off, what am I going to do about it? How are we going to fix this, right? Being able to kind of problem solve. But when you consider your roles and your responsibilities, you realize that you can't do everything. And this hadith is beautiful. It brings up how you're going to have a collaboration with your spouse. You're going to have a collaboration with your wife, so you can have these mutually accepted responsibilities, and you're going to achieve something greater than you could have achieved on your own. And when you recognize that, then it actually liberates you and frees you from thinking that I need to micromanage every aspect of the family. But on the other hand, my brothers, we can't just be of those guys that say, hey, I'm the man of the family, so we're having steak tonight. Or I'm the man of the family, so we're gonna only have this kind of ice cream. No peppermint ice cream will enter my freezer. I refuse, right? And especially when we try to do that, and I know people that try to make those types of decisions, but then their wives are looking at them and they don't really believe in them as a leader. Why? Because they're not demonstrating that there are official roles and responsibilities that are being taken care of. So, for example, yes, you might make money, but if your wife doesn't feel like you're financially responsible with that money, if you're gambling it away, or you're not organized with your finances, and she doesn't know how much are we going to have enough for rent next month, or are you constantly borrowing? Are you in debt and not worried about it? These are things that don't make her feel financially safe and secure. Right? And now you enter doubt in people that are in your charge, and it becomes very difficult for you to ask of people to do their jobs when they kind of doubt that you're doing yours. One kind of general rule of thumb is, if you have to pull rank in your leadership, then most likely there's going to be an issue with that and in the relationship of those who are following your charge. You shouldn't have to. You should be able to demonstrate that you're doing your job, you're fulfilling your roles, you're fulfilling your responsibilities. And when you can demonstrate that, then things open up because the other person can see that. And sometimes you need to put that reminder, but there's a nice way of doing it. Hey, sweetheart, I'm working late tonight and I'm getting up early tomorrow. It's gonna be really hard for me. I have to just go to sleep as soon as I get home, and I won't get a chance to really prepare something to eat. Do you think you could put some together for me? You could say, hey, sweetheart, I need you to make me lunch tomorrow. Yeah, you can. But if you're feeling that you want to kind of share what you're doing, or you're not just messing around, it's like, well, why are you coming home so late? Why aren't you come home earlier, right? Or what's going on tomorrow? Like, she doesn't even know that you're working tomorrow, and then you're saying, well, I didn't have lunch today because you didn't make it for me, and so on and so forth. Like, that's not the kind of leaders we want to be, gentlemen, right? What we want to do is say, hey, this is me fulfilling my role, and kind of implying that I'm doing these things that I'm supposed to be doing, and this is what we talked about and agreed on, that you're depending on me to make the money so our family can progress, but I'm going to depend on you to help feed me today, right? That's what I need, right? And especially when you lovingly remind someone that this is what you're doing for them and for the relationship, and you do it in a manner that befits Allah's majesty, you choose your words wisely and you say it properly, then mercy just enters their heart and they say, well, I want to do this for you, right? That's the ideal. That's the relationship we want to be having. So when we are not pulling rank and we're earning that respect, then we find ourselves trying to do favors for each other as well. And sometimes then we end up kind of crossing those lines. And one beautiful example is the Prophet ﷺ, he was known to help clean the dishes in the house. He was known to have a garment that needed sewing and that needed to be fixed. Maybe it was a shoe or something that he wore, and he would try to take care of it himself. And it's just so honorable. Like this is a masculine man, that he's handling his business out there, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but then he comes home and recognizes that there are roles and responsibility being fulfilled by his spouse. Maybe she's not available to do it, maybe she's not she's doing something else, or maybe she's just tired or exhausted. He's looking at the well-being of the family and saying, this is not difficult for me, I can do this. And what that shows is that now he's willing to help out and help with that task. So, if there is help that's needed on the other end of things, his wife will be willing to do that, or she'll be willing to do a little bit more. So, one of the things that we learn from leadership, or one of the things that we consider in our leadership is, and we've heard this before, but leading by example. But one of my teachers, when a friend was just telling me that he was having a conversation with him, and one of my teachers, the sheikh, he said that if you see an issue in your spouse, most likely it is also seen in you. So put the work in to fix it. And then put your trust in Allah, and they will notice. And if and when they notice your effort, then she or he will start to fix that change and make that change as well. So let's stop pointing the finger. Let's consider ourselves as shepherds. Our task is to get our family from point A to point B. And maybe those in our charge don't even know that we have to cross this checkpoint and that checkpoint and so on and so forth. But as we are going, we're getting a little annoyed sometimes that I don't like how this person's talking to me. Or I'm not happy about coming home and seeing this when I expect to see that. These clothes are not folded, or my shirt was not ironed, or whatever the case may be, something that's bothering you. But there's no effort being shown, or even when you get angry, how you handle your anger. But no effort being shown that you're trying to change those things, right? Or you're trying to have a conversation, or that you are fulfilling your roles. Then how can you expect someone else to fulfill theirs, right? As a man, we are put in that unique position to lead, always to lead. And if that's the case, then instead of falling back, my young brothers and my older brothers, and just complaining, we look to the examples of the prophets. That it was an example of all the prophets that they would put their hands up in our head and their head down, and they would make dua to Allah. When they would complain to their Rabb, the one who sustains all and sustains himself, right? And as Allah is the only being able to sustain himself and all life, we go and seek that sustenance from the Creator first and foremost, and ask for that help, and then do actions that are good deeds and befitting that. And when we bring it up and we talk and we're trying to have some sort of conflict resolution, we are taking these steps as well, and we are asking for Allah to put barakah in our efforts so we can move forward. So leading by example, if there's something that you don't like and you're seeing, we should try to consider ourselves first and foremost and go from there. Now, one of the things that's really, fun about sheep, I had the opportunity this past break to go to a farm. My wife and I went to a farm and we were petting sheep, and it was great. Is that they're kind of social, right? If there's an excitement going on in that corner, they'll kind of flock to that corner, and there's a bunch of sheep usually around in one area. But then some sheep are kind of on their own, doing their own alone thing, finding some food or something else. And then some sheep are just running around because they're younger. Some sheep are much older. Some sheep are kind of like leaders, or they're the mothers, and they're just kind of pushing their children to go in a certain way, or just keeping an eye on them. Or if a child is doing something, one of the younger sheep is doing something the older sheep doesn't like, some of the older aunties of the sheep, they're gonna kind of like at them and just tell them like stop doing it, basically. But when we put ourselves in that situation and you start thinking about it, you recognize that no sheep are the same. No two sheep are the same. They have different personalities. They might have conflict with each other. Some sheep like each other. Some sheep don't like each other. Maybe there's a physical deficit. Maybe one is slower. Maybe one is faster. So now you think about herding these sheep and how you can go. You recognize that as a leader, one of the responsibilities we should have is to get to know those in our charge. Sometimes we have a plan and we say, hey, I have to get from point A to point B and I want to do it in 3 hours, but you didn't even meet the sheep. You didn't even get to know them and figure it out. And it might be that you will comfortably get there in 4 hours, but 3 hours might be pushing it for whatever needs, right? And sometimes we make this mistake. Many parents, before they have children, they have all these plans. What if Allah tests you or gives you the opportunity for reward by taking care of a child that has special needs? Right? If that's the case, then you're not going to just try to force your plan into a situation like that. Now, what if one of your children is more sensitive, right? What if one of your children has some physical needs that they need the parents to depend on, or they have some sort of health costs that you didn't budget for before? We have to try to consider what are the pieces moving forward. And with different phases of life, different needs are there. And that goes back to even your spouse, that maybe they're going through something, maybe certain seasons are harder than others on them. You can't just have a plan and say, this is how it's going to be. Yes, as a man, we should have a vision. We should have a 1-year plan, a 2-year plan, a 3-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, and think to it. But we should also be willing to adjust so we can show that compassion. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't have to do some things, he would do at home. But one of the things that we learned from when he did these things is that he was very compassionate, right? I know my wife can do this, but I want to do this. I want to make it easier. If you notice that there's something that your wife really doesn't like, or you communicate it and she discusses and say, this, I just really don't like this chore. And you think as a man, like, this is nothing for me. I can do it. It's not a problem, right? Then you quietly do it, right? And you go from there and you see how that improves your marriage. So one of my friends, he was saying that he had actually lived in Pakistan for a short amount of time. And he said that he would see shepherds in Pakistan. And this was it was an amazing image, but it wasn't something that I got to see myself. He said that they would walk around with sticks. Okay, that makes sense, right? You think of someone herding animals that have a stick. But he said that these sticks were not thick, they were very thin. And what the shepherds would do is they would hit the ground next to the animal. They wouldn't be just beating the animal. Again, being a man, a compassionate leader, a qawwam, you don't want to just beat your sheep. and I really hope that's not the solution that we have, that if there are people in our charge, they're not listening, our solution is to just beat them, right? That's not the prophetic example, and that's not the example that we want to move forward with, and that's not what we want to teach as well. As a leader, one of the things that we always try to do is we always seek to inspire others to be a better leader than us. That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to move forward, and we're trying to help our sons become men and good husbands. We're trying to help our daughters that are good wives, and they are young women that respect themselves. We're trying to teach modesty to both of our children. We're trying to teach respect to both of them. We're trying to make sure that these examples that they're learning about from the past, from the Sahabi, from the Prophet ﷺ, are things that they try to implement in their lives as well, and they improve on their character constantly. There may be times to be stern, there may be times to be harsh, but the shepherds of the sheep that don't want the animal to attack or give up or run away, they will not just keep hitting the sheep with their stick. They will course correct when necessary and go from there. And it might be that it's better to get to your destination in 6 hours instead of the original 3. So don't make these decisions without even meeting your sheep. So one of the things that we as guys do is we come together and say, hey guys, we have this problem, we want to do something. Let's go ahead and watch the game together. Where are we going to watch it? What are we going to use? There's some people that are part of the problem solving, and maybe you don't need everybody to be the leader of that group. But there's some guys just sit back. And it's like, yeah, they'll figure it out. And they just kind of get lazy. So just my advice for young men out there, especially if you're not married, you may not be responsible for a marriage yet, or you might not be responsible for a family yet, but look at all of these things as opportunities. The hadith makes some specific examples, a man, a woman, right, a servant, but it doesn't give every possible example. But consider to yourself that who you are in the workplace is a leader. Who you are as a cousin is a leader. As a nephew is a leader, right? As a point guard, right? On the court, right? As the captain of the soccer team, consider what words you're saying. Consider how you're saying it. Consider who you're talking to. The Prophet ﷺ had such high emotional intelligence that those people that needed him to be gentle and they needed to hear something gently, they would hear it gently. There are some companions that he would follow them, and it's a longer story, but he would follow them and he would make a joke about something until they understand that they were doing something haram, they were doing something wrong, and they would laugh about it, but they would get the message eventually. And they would promise the Prophet that from today, I won't make that mistake again, right? But that's how they needed that message to be delivered to them, right? And some of them, they needed their garments to be grabbed, right? And they needed to be so, like, when will you fix yourself? Some of them just needed a very direct, plain language. Say, I'm a simple man. I don't want to hear about all these extra things. What are the basics that I need to know for this answer? And that's what it is. There are some people that asked the same question, and they said, the Prophet said yes. And then the other person came, asked the same question, he said no. And knowing what they were trying to do with that answer and what the level of sincerity may have been. So don't just be that guy in the group of guys that say, yeah, they'll figure out where we're watching it. They'll figure out what we're eating. They'll figure it out, right? Try to start using those leadership skills today. Start problem solving and start working on coming up with plans and solutions. And then when things don't work out, how do we make shura? How do we go back and talk about it and say, hey, maybe it could have been better this way? One of the most underrated hadith, and maybe we'll talk about it some other time, but ad-din nasiha, right? Something, I don't mean to say it's underrated in the sense that we don't acknowledge it as a hadith, but I don't see very many of us really living that today. We kind of live in an age where, hey, so-and-so's doing their own thing, and I'm not going to tell them. They're doing something wrong or something I don't like, I'm not going to tell them. And a lot of times, ugly thoughts become ugly actions. And unfortunately, when you dislike something more and more and you can't bring it up in the responsible and respectful way, you start to complain about it. And you start to start saying things that we shouldn't be saying about, someone behind their back. And then we start this backbiting, and now we're just accumulating bad deeds. It's just not a good cycle whatsoever. So if there are things that we want to correct, we have to be able to give that advice. So as a leader, giving advice, taking advice, these are all skills to learn. And as we enter into our marriages, or as we are progressing through having children and figuring out when do they need the kind of more, what stage of life they need the more direct supervision, and then after that, when do they need a little bit looser, and after that, when they need a friend, at what phase of life, this type of respect and this type of, treatment, understanding, and then when you're going to give your advice, it'll depend on these factors and understanding these factors and how you give that advice. So this is something that I wish and I hope that people can reflect on, and they can take this into consideration, irrespective if you've been married for 20 years or if you are 2 weeks into talking to somebody, or even 20 days, or but there will always be positions and situations for you to be a leader. And just kind of a bonus lesson that I used to reflect on. This is what I used to think about a lot, and it helped me a lot. Because many of us, we will see a situation, we'll figure out what is needed for us in that situation, and we'll say, this is how I'm going to be. So I'm a leader, I'm leading this group project, and this is what is needed for me, so I'm going to put that emphasis out there. And sometimes leadership can bring out the best in people. We're doing it for the sake of Allah. What I'm doing is a good deed. I'm trying to just kind of be a just ruler, no problem. But the other times, when I'm not given that responsibility, I really can't grow and step into it. But when you're just taking a back seat and you're not actually practicing these skills, it becomes very difficult to draw upon them when you're angry, when things are not going the way you want. It becomes very difficult to draw upon them when you're angry, when things are not going the way you want, when calamity hits you, when you're being stressed by the potential for poverty. These are real struggles that we will be tested with. And these are things that Allah tested the prophets whom He loved. These tests are not things that are just punishments in this world. So the question comes out to us is, what kind of shepherd are we going to be? And as we enter different phases of our life, we're going to use these skills that we learned and keep building off of it. And we should always be trying to change. The Muslim is always reflecting, is always trying to seek forgiveness for his actions that are wrong, and trying to promise that he's not going to do them again. and move forward with them. And if you make mistakes, that's okay. Allah is the most forgiving, and Allah is ready to forgive you. It's just we have to ask, and we have to ask sincerely with the intention to move forward. And this is something, and these are characteristics and practices that are very good for when we're leading people as well. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make you all leaders and make you just rulers and leaders, and give you sincerity, to forgive you for your shortcomings, and bless you with spouses and families that will help you grow closer to Allah as you lead them to Jannah. And if you are a Muslim man that feels like he is struggling in his marriage, or you are looking to just prepare for marriage, I want you to book a call with me. You can find all the information in the description, in the link below. And leave me a comment, tell me what you think, and subscribe for more. May Allah bless you. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.